Welcome back, Brian.
Great to be back.
I know we started with talking before, and I'm going to force you to show your hand, as they say in poker, that you've been planting. You've been with one of your granddaughters, I guess.
Uh, well, I have 13 grandkids, and three of them are here right now as we're talking. And my wife's teaching two of them. She teaches them each some piano, and then the other two, when they're not on the piano, I'm the distraction. So we were out doing some planting of flowers.
Very cool. I like. You can't go wrong by planting seeds. You know.
That's right. Well, actually, I planted the seeds last fall. And so, I mean, all the tulips and hyacinths and, other bulb flowers are coming up. But this, we're doing some pansies that were pre-grown. So we're just filling in some places with seeds that somebody else planted that already bloomed.
So I'm not a flower expert, but I know the word pansy, and it just made me think, how did that word ever come up with people? You're like a real pansy. How did that ever happen?
Well, it's sort of a delicate flower, I guess. I don't know, they easily, they don't have a whole lot of strength, but they seem to flourish as long as you don't step on them.
Yeah, so that's where it came from, though, right? The flower?
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty good. Every once in a while, this is a whole distraction. Every once in a while, I hear an expression and it just hits me the wrong way. And I say, where did that come from? And I look it up, and 50% of the time, I'm like really shocked where it came from.
Uh-huh.
So, but hey, it's good to have you back on the Leaders Who Care series. This is a revisit we're doing with a lot of select leaders who care, and share with us a little bit about how 2020 kind of eased into 2021, and what's new and exciting for you also for this new year.
Well, the big thing that, of course, everybody discovered this year was Zoom, which we're using right now. But the bigger thing that has really helped my work expand exponentially was investing in a virtual conference platform. So there's a whole big difference between putting things on a Zoom, having a webinar or a Zoom meeting, versus having an environment where people enter into it and it feels like you're in the conference. You come in and you pick which session you want to go to, and then you can go over and check out the chat room. You can visit the exhibition hall, and every company that's represented can have their booth there. And then you can sort of the secret sauce in making it work that I discovered is to make sure everything's pre-recorded. So just like right now, we're not live broadcasting to the world. You're pre-recording, and you can cut out all the stuff you don't like that I say, and then make it all better. And so, and then if somebody were watching this and my internet goes down, or I'm late, which I was a few minutes late, then it's frustrating for an audience. But when you pre-record your content, and then the live interaction is a supplement to the main content, then sort of the day flows. So I mean, that's sort of getting into a little bit of the weeds, but
it's all right.
I think that's
planting before, so it's perfect segue.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it's I think it's the new normal. So we can't just Zoom and this kind of thing where we do one-on-ones. It doesn't substitute for a conference, but if you design these virtuals, they can be meaningful experiences. So just as an example, by how we were able to do the conference, we had 400 participants from 75 different companies, and they spent an average of 4 hours per person engaged at the conference. And a lot of that was because we had people at different roles. They would be a respondent, like Google presented what they're doing in their workplace on faith and belief. And then we had people from American Express respond. And then people would tune in to watch that live response. So the Google part was pre-recorded, but then the American Express could grill Google or compare notes on what was going on. So made it interactive, and we had a competition where American Airlines gave tickets 2 business class tickets to our big event we're having in Tokyo at the Paralympics, which we'll see, they're not letting spectators in. So anyhow, back to the virtual conference, it's like, it's going to be a must have part of sort of going forward. And if you don't think virtual conference as its own event, then all you do is live stream on YouTube, and who tunes into that? I don't know, maybe, I mean, if it's the Academy Awards or something, really cool, maybe some people will, or Super Bowl. But for most things, does the time work out? But so you really have to do a virtual conference like you would do a real one. So anyhow, that's what I've learned, and it's really made, it's like a whole new world. I've come into this because coming from here on out, now that people realize we don't have to fly all of our people from one coast to the other for some meeting that lasts 2 hours, and it takes them a day to get there, 2-hour meeting, and then they take a red eye home or whatever, and they're out of commission for 3 days for a 2-hour meeting. So it's a new world we're in. So it's sort of figuring out how to adapt and adapting well, if possible.
Yeah, I think it's almost like anything. When you have a crisis or a breakdown, then it gives people room to create new stuff. And I think you're right. Even if it's a 2-day conference, if it took you a day to get there, give or take, and a day to get back, you start wondering. Now, there's obviously positives with that, with the physical connection, but it's definitely going to change. And just like a lot of things, you're going to find that if you don't have a virtual conference, you're behind. Versus the regular conference. And I was expecting you to say it was a religious experience, and you let me down by that. But I didn't get to participate in a lot of it this year, but I did get a chance to connect with Tomas Flyer, actually. And,
good. Yeah.
Because he had some common things that I had, and I liked what he was talking about. Really super young man, and a lot of the other guests you had were fantastic too. What does 2021, look like with respect to making a difference?
Well, one of the big things, so I work on issues related to religious freedom, business, the economy. So religious freedom broadly defined. So that means, people can have a faith, change their faith, have no faith at all. And what all that means when you're authentic about it. So in that, one of the biggest challenges today is that we've entered into a modern era of genocide. And it's just, it was like after the Holocaust, never again. And that's something we need to come back to. I was just at a big meeting at the US Holocaust Memorial Museum today on genocide, and they produced this 200-page book on giving people a roadmap who have suffered through a genocide, how to seek justice, and sort of what you need to do. And, they had 5 different groups there that are currently either having experienced a genocide or on verge of genocide. And all of these current day issues relate to religion. And then they have relations to business. And so the big one that relates to business, well, I'll start with it's not a little one, but it's one that's sort of almost over, but not quite, with ISIS and the Nineveh Plain in northern Iraq with the Yazidis and Christians and a few other smaller religious minorities that ISIS, destroyed them, killing the old men and old women, getting the young men, if they don't convert and be child soldiers or young soldiers, then they're dead too, and taking the women off and and selling them in markets as sex slaves. I mean, who can imagine that going on? So now they're recovering, and so we're working with the Free Yazidi Foundation to try to raise some money to help them get a women's employment center, training center up and running. So that's
a great cause. That's a great cause. About a year and a half ago, we we actually did an initiative for them too, to raise a bunch of money for them. And I don't think anywhere nearly enough people even know about it.
No, and so I think that that's the next, I don't want to say it's the next big thing. It's a big thing. It's a big problem. But I think the next big thing on the radar of, of people will be that we've got to wake up to see these danger signs of genocide that's going on with the Rohingyas, Muslims in Myanmar, Burma. In Nigeria, there's danger of this. In South Sudan, there's been danger of this. And then among the Uyghurs in Western China, 1 million of them in re-education camps, so they learn vocations according to the Chinese, and they take doctors and lawyers and teach them how to run a sewing machine. I'm not sure that's, that's a stretch of the word, but just so much going on, and we continue to do business there. China they're now the #1 destination for foreign investment. So there's just a disconnect between these authoritarian regimes and business.
Sorry,
yeah.
but I did see that H&M and Nike just announced, if not yesterday or the day before, about not at least not doing business in that area of China.
Yeah.
That was enough, but at least it's starting to get some recognition that way.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It's quite amazing, and how you can't just cut off connection with China, to use that example, but we've got to have enough moral standard to press on it, and not just be swayed by, well, what about the money?
Yeah. Well, I'm not quite completely sure that you can't, so H&M, they took that stand, and now China is boycotting H&M stores in China. So it's not that they're deciding to not do business there and pull out, but once they took a stand like that, they may have to close up all their stores. So I think that what's going to happen is, as more companies take a stand on this, it's going to have a backlash in Chinese society. Of course, the government's going to fuel that. And we'll have to see. Volkswagen has a plant in Xinjiang where all of this is happening. I mean, a German car company, you can just imagine how that plays. I mean, I don't have to spell it out. And so are they going to keep manufacturing cars in an area that's, that the US has called a area of genocide? So it's, this is not going to go away because, one, China's not going to change. And these other areas where, like, the Rohingya problem is really huge. And so, I mean, that's the danger now, is that people think, well, the way to solve our problem is to take all these people, whatever this people are, whether they're Muslims or Christians or Jews or Yazidis or whatever they are, identify them in that way, because that's an easy way to identify them. And then let's just take them and do this with them, whether it's, so that's, I mean, that's really dangerous thinking.
Yeah, and we're seeing it, and it could never happen here is the most ridiculous statement I've always ever heard, because so many examples that I've seen with respect to Israel, or even with Quebec, when they wanted to separate and there were tanks in the street, and people saying in Canada it can never happen here. And the Asians now here, anything can happen wherever you are. And the one thing I've always appreciated about the organization that you founded and run is that, when people first hear about religion, it always brings up something because it's emotional, but you're doing the work of basically, we can learn to respect each other for something as emotional as religion, then the rest can follow suit, right?
Yeah. Well, in this space I'm working, I work with John Templeton, Templeton Religion Trust. So they fund different things. I've worked with them for years, and they're actually funding some thinking around how to better define sort of what religious freedom is. And they've come up with this concept of covenantal pluralism. It sounds like something Protestant, but let's get past that. Whether that's good or bad. But but basically the idea is that we covenant together, we agree, and we make a pact that, what you believe is really important to you, what I believe is really important to me, and we're going to stand up for each other's right to believe that, and we're going to defend each other's right to believe and behave accordingly. But it doesn't mean that I think what you're believing and doing is right or wrong. It's that the right thing is that I'm giving you that freedom to
Right.
do that, as long as it's not harmful, to
Exactly.
people.
Isn't it the same? I've been accused so many times of simplifying things, and it's probably true, but I mean, isn't it, not to compare it to sports, but isn't it the same as, I don't like your college because of the football team that you
Yeah.
have there, so I quote unquote hate them or whatnot. You can compete with passion, but it doesn't mean you have to hate at the same
Oh
time.
yeah, I mean, it's like you play the game, that with your analogy. I mean, if you're gonna hate, okay, I'm a Penn State alum, and Ohio State's, they're the bad guys. But if you hate them, that doesn't make any sense. You want to beat them, you want to be a victor, not a. You don't want to see them vanquished to history. You want to have them back next year so you can beat them again.
Well, that's a
So
whole example of a league. How
yeah,
how valuable is your championship in that league if you make the league not valuable by that?
yeah, yeah,
And our
yeah,
league is the planet and people.
yeah. So there you go, covenantal pluralism with a sports analogy. So
It's a human analogy, actually, if you think about it. And growing up, we were always taught what you said was you don't have to agree with them, but you can respect what they believe in, and maybe you might even be able to learn a little bit from what they believe in as well,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then go from there. Or do you want to spend your whole time, in that abyss, or in that whole hating stuff all the time versus creating stuff with people?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, of course, our country has just pulled itself apart on these cultural issues, and so that I think that we need to come back to that as our strength. Otherwise, authoritarianism is going to win the century, because they stamp out any dissent, and then get everybody group thinking, that in a certain way. And that's not really good for the future of humanity, because whoever those are controlling the group think, they're not divine. They don't have omniscience and to know what's really the best. So sort of in freedom, then we work those things out, that competition. But if we don't have that healthy spirit of that pluralistic and competition, of ideas, where we still say, yeah, the ability to have that competition is what we're standing for, that freedom, then we're going to get beat. And so that's nobody wants that, but people need to see that that's the stakes that are going on right now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing history we're living through, I think, right now, and pretty crucial. And if I went back to the sports analogy, the coach would always say, "Let's get back to basics,"
Yeah,
and really think what's important here. So
yeah, yeah,
you keep doing important work, and that's why we probably have to have a few more sequels of revisits with you to really get into the details. But again, thanks so much for what you do, and for being partners, being friends with us, and keep it up, man.
yeah. Well, thanks, Mark. It's great to be connected, and I'll look forward to where our next chapter is next year. This time, who knows what the world's going to be? I hope it's a lot better.
Well, it's up to us, right? Sort of.
It is. Amen.
Amen to that. Sidney Poitier, remember that one? Hey, they don't want me singing. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.